You guys could be doing anything this evening, so I mean that when I say I appreciate you guys coming out. So this is what we're going to talk about today is steps to finding deals. I thought about this forever. Like, what am I going to talk about? What can I condense into an hour and a half that will be beneficial to a group of people? So I broke it down into these 4 steps. I'll give a quick overview and then we'll dive into the weeds of them. But let me remind you guys, I want this to be as interactive as possible. So please interrupt me, please ask questions, and we'll have a discussion. Okay, so number 1, defining your criteria. This is very important. Understanding who your avatar is, who you're targeting towards, what location you're going after, and what defines a deal. If you don't know what a deal is when you're searching, then you're gonna be spinning your wheels for a really long time. Number 2, build a list. Once you know what you're going after, then you need to figure out what filters and how to build a list of who to target. So you're gonna pull the names, you're gonna pull the addresses, but guess what? Once you have the names and the addresses, how do you contact them? You need contact information, then that's called skip tracing. Can someone in the audience share with us a quick sentence of what skip tracing is? Most of you guys probably know what it is, but okay.
Get phone numbers.
Amen. Whoever said that, get phone numbers. So skip tracing is collecting contact information for whatever list. And again, we're going to go through these in depth, but just giving the overview. So skip tracing, once you have the property and the name, now you're collecting phone numbers, emails, whatever you need. Number 3, once you have their contact information, you're going to figure out how you're going to market this list. There's tons and tons of different tactics on marketing, especially today. It feels like there's a new tactic every day. Like I hear of the new and greatest tactic, I swear, with all these gurus. So, and then number 4 is organizing leads. This industry, I'm sorry, is not a quick close. You are not going to close someone, rarely on the first or second call. So organizing these leads in a manner where you can nurture and follow up in an effective way is crucial. Okay, number 1, define your criteria. Like I was talking about, what asset class are you going after? Is it single family, multifamily, mobile home parks, storage? The list goes on, right? My expertise lies in single family. So that's what we're going to be discussing today is the single family aspect. I'm diving a little bit more into multifamily, like the 4 to 8 units, but that's where I'm at right now. Now, where is your market? This seems like it's such an obvious answer, but it's really not. It goes from hyper-local, where you're like sub-streets, city, county, state, national. And people, investors can dominate in any one of these metrics. I know investors, wholesalers that serve the whole entire nation that do millions a month in assignment fees. So you can stay hyper-local. I prefer hyper-local because then you know the businesses that are around, you know, just as a realtor, right? Most of you guys are realtors. If you focus on a specific location, it's so much easier to understand that like the back of your hand, which helps you when you're working with these sellers. So pick whatever fits your personality most. I like hyper-local for those reasons. What strategy are you targeting? This is a loaded question, and if you guys are on social media, you're probably pitched a new strategy all the time, right? And everything seems sexy, everything feels like the next best thing, and this is gonna be your ticket out, and you're buying a vacation home in Hawaii, this is the way. And that they're good at convincing you, like that's what they do, they're marketers, right? And so being focused about what strategy you're after will be extremely beneficial, especially if to master something. Then you can grow into that. Then maybe you add something. But if you're trying to master all of it, good luck. So I want to highlight each of these few. Just a quick overview if you guys aren't familiar with these strategies. Just the 3 most popular ones today. Seller finance, this is what I focus mostly on today. And that's where, and let me correct this, by agents especially, and not trying to be rude, but I am an agent, so I can say this, I guess. When people market their listing as offering seller finance, it doesn't, to my definition, it does not mean they're offering seller finance. And the reason I say that is because seller finance, true seller finance to me, means they own the property outright. There's no underlying mortgage on it, and the seller is going to be my bank. So that's what seller finance is. They own it outright or close to it. Let's say they have 90% equity and my down payment's going to cover the rest. It's a lot more clean and easy, and you can get as creative as you wish when there's no underlying mortgage. That leaves me to Sub2, the next one, which is similar because people confuse them, but it's quite the opposite in the sense of they have little to no equity. So now, instead of the seller being your go-to guy and negotiating with the seller, and there's no floor, there's no ceiling, when you're dealing with a Sub2 deal, there is a floor, there is a ceiling because there's an underlying note that you're fighting with. So if their rate is a 4.5, or let's say, yeah, if it's a 4.5 rate, you think you're going to get a 3% rate on that. There's little chance, especially if they don't have equity. So I'm going to get to a story of Sub2. I'd rather highlight it at the beginning, but I'll dive into cash deals first and then talk about my story. So cash deals. This is what I focused on at the beginning when the market was blazing hot and everyone and their mother could make money on a flip, on a buy and hold. It was gorgeous, right? Everyone was making money. Cash deals are typically distressed sellers. That's when you're getting a steep discount. Think of the Burr strategy. Does anyone know what the Burr strategy is? So it's 70% of ARV. You have to make sure after all costs, you can refinance and take all your money back. So that's the Burr strategy. Cash deals are also most commonly flips, right? So when you see these wholesalers marketing these deals that aren't creative finance, they're typically cash deals. Okay, so now the Sub2 story. Some of you might have heard this, some of you maybe not. The short version, I lost 180 grand of my own cash on a Sub2 deal. So when you guys hear these gurus screaming in your face how easy Sub2, how clean, how risk-free it is, I want you to think twice about that. I don't want you to completely ignore the strategy either. I would still take down a Sub2 deal today, but my risk tolerance is shockingly different because of what I went through. So what happened, trying to condense this as quick as possible, I bought a deal, and this was about a year ago, after I sold my Kirkland house in the Seattle area and did pretty well on it. That was one of my first acquisitions. I was gonna roll my money into this beautiful 3% deal, 2014 build in Rose Park, where I was going to finish the basement. So down payment was $110,000. First red flag of a Sub2. Don't ever put $110,000 on a $450K acquisition. There's a lot of reasons for that. You can chat with me after about it, but to keep this condensed, I'll spare you that. So I put $110,000 down, and then I put 70 grand into finishing the basement. Now I had top and bottom renters, life was good, and the money was coming in, and I was like, cool, $1,000 cash flow, and I was happy. About a month or two later, I get a text from one of my tenants saying that I haven't noticed that my property is going to auction. $180,000 into this. My property that I had title to is going to auction. So, again, trying to keep this short for you guys. I obviously hit up attorneys. I talked to several attorneys. I talked to my mentors. I talked to the wholesaler that sold me this deal. I'm chatting with everyone that knows more about this than me. And push comes to shove, we figure out, which I'm sure you've seen from videos, that if you want to save a sub-2 deal, you convert it back to a contract for deed. So converting back to a contract for deed means I am now taking the title, which is my stamp of ownership, giving it back to the original seller so that it doesn't look like I'm taking over this mortgage. So then the bank's like, oh, you're okay. It looks like it's back to the owner's name somehow. You're good. That's not what happened. Not even close. So turns out what I realized is sub-2, again, you're taking over a loan behind the bank's back. So it's against the bank's contract, but it's not against the law. So with that being said, now I'm fighting with the bank and I'm trying to negotiate with the bank. I'm trying to think of all the ways. I'm talking to my attorney. And what I found out is that this product, the person that held my loan, you guys...
Wholesale company, and I'm an investor as well. But just want to share like a couple quotes with you guys, and then 6 points, basically the same thing as this, but just kind of my thoughts on how important defining your criteria is. So first off, I love this quote, it's one of my favorites. It's complexity is the enemy of execution. I feel like that's the issue with a lot of people that are beginning in real estate or trying to invest. There's so many different avenues. You can do fix and flip, short-term rental, long-term rental, multifamily, commercial. I mean, you can get in the weeds quick. Development, raw land. There's so many different strategies, and complexity is the enemy of execution. So if you're not crystal clear on what you want to do, you're not going to get any results. So I love that Tanner has defined your criteria as number one. That is the foundation to everything, in my opinion. And then the next quote that I want to share is there's this guy named, I think it's Jeff Hoffman. He's a billionaire. He started like the airport. He invented the airport kiosks that you see in airports. And he says the world's most successful people are not smarter than you. They just executed better than you. And I feel like a lot of us, we shy away from execution because we're so caught up in the strategy and knowing what to do. It's really hard. I've been doing this for 5 years, and even I sometimes feel like I'm not super crystal clear on my investment strategy. So hopefully like today, we can get that out of the way and get to the point where you can just focus on executing. And again, defining your crystal clear criteria is the foundation to everything. If you don't have your crystal clear criteria first, then it's a waste of time to build these systems, the processes for deal flow, and to be offering or looking at properties or setting up notifications on Zillow, or we all driving for dollars, whatever you're doing. It's a complete waste of time if you don't have a crystal clear criteria, in my opinion. The only thing that I would add to this list is, and I guess it kind of goes into one of these, but is condition. Like what type of condition are you willing to invest in? Are you willing to do remodels? And if you are, is it heavy, medium, or light? But I love these. We should all be able to answer these questions, and if we can't, again, it's a waste of time. The next 3 points that you're going to talk about, it's a complete waste of time to even move on to the next 3 items if you can't define your criteria first. Again, it's the foundation to everything. So that's my 2 cents on having a crystal clear criteria.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Jaden. Give it up for Jaden. And everybody, I will, my rant for sub-2 is warranted, but I don't want to steer you guys away from it. For example, for me now, I'll still buy a sub-2 deal. I will not go with Utah Housing. I will not go with a low income entity. Those are that's the most important aspect of it. And I will not put more than 10% down. Maybe 15% down if it's a banger, but 10% down that's where my risk is limited to. So there's a lot of clean sub-2 deals that you shouldn't shy away from, but you should also have someone that you trust that you can shoot back and forth. So don't trust a wholesaler. Did I say that?
You did now?
Okay, good. And I'll add another note on this. As someone that's done wholesale, I've wholesaled several, so I'm saying that from my perspective too. Don't trust a wholesaler. They're trying to sell you something, right? So one thing I'll add too, with this criteria, this is you trying to find deals, but as a buyer too, if you don't understand your criteria, I can guarantee you'll be one of the last people to get deals. This is another thing that Jade and I have talked about too. When I'll post about my deals, like, hey, I got this 3.25% interest rate in Holiday that cash flows. Do you want a cash flowing deal in Holiday? Cool. Get them on my buyers list. I'll call them. Hey, what kind of deals are you looking for? Anything that cash flows, send it. That's everyone. So if you want a cash flowing deal in Utah, get in line with 250 people. The chances of me thinking of you are very slim. If you come to me and say, hey, I'm looking in Highland, Alpine, if it breaks even, cool, send it over to me. I have $150K to spend on a down payment. I'd like to stay between 15% down, and this is gonna be a rental property. Okay, perfect. Do you know who I'm gonna think of when I find a deal in Highland? I'm gonna think of that person. I'm not gonna think of the person that wants cash flow. Jaden.
Can I just second that?
Yeah.
One thing that I forgot to mention. So my job for this wholesale company for the last 5 years is to build relationships with the buyers. So we've got like 7,000 people on our list. My job is to find out exactly what they're looking for, build their buy box. And when I call someone and they say, oh, I'm looking for anything, just bring me a good deal, I know they're not serious. I've been doing it long enough to know that the guys, when I ask that question, they're like, hey, I buy in these zip codes, I need a 3-bed, 2-bath, I'm not looking for anything more than a medium remodel, or they're dialed in on their criteria. I know they're serious. And yeah, to your point, next time I get a deal that kind of matches their criteria, I actually think of them rather than everybody else, not everybody else, but the majority of people who just say, I'll buy anything as long as it's a good deal, or I'll go anywhere as long as it's a good deal. That's not true. It's good to niche down and have your buy box.
100%. Thank you, Jaden. And I'll say too, like I have a client that I've done several deals with who had X amount of dollars that he needed to spend before year end. And I knew he had capital, and it just took that first deal to build trust with this guy, to know that I can present deals to him and that he'll execute. So that's one side of it, especially if you're not in with a deal finder. Having crystal clear criteria is the way to get in. So, okay. Can we all stand up? I don't want you guys to fall asleep, and I'm just gonna be talking for a long time, so we gotta keep moving. You can stretch out a little bit. I know it's gonna be a long grind, and we're learning. This is a lot of information. Oh, I needed it, so you guys probably did too. You guys can stand as long as you want to, but okay, we'll go to the next slide. And we're gonna dive into these a little bit more. So we talked about the strategy, but I want to kind of dive into the weeds on who you're working with these strategies, so you guys can figure out what fits your personality best. So for me, I work 90% of my deals are seller finance. So who I'm usually working with, these are older folks who own their property outright. They've owned it for a long time. And they're much more sophisticated. So when you're working with distressed sellers on cash deals, Sub2, whatever it is, they're a lot more distressed. That's just the fact. That's usually the avatar that you're selling to or buying. So with seller finance, they're usually a lot more sophisticated. And if you actually think about it, it makes sense. If someone owns a property that's $800K duplex in Salt Lake, their net worth is $800K. That's a whole lot higher than the average American. So that right there, just they're a lot more sophisticated. And so with that avatar, the main pitch that all these seller finance deals, why it makes sense, like I'll talk to people, why would someone ever take a 3% interest rate? Like, what are you giving them? Why would someone take that? And the reason is deferring capital gains. There's other reasons, but that's almost entirely why people take seller finance. If someone's gonna sell their $800,000 house or their duplex in Salt Lake, I guess the reason I'm talking about this is because we literally offered on Mayar's listing in Salt Lake. It was a beautiful duplex. My client wasn't as serious as I hoped, but the reason they went seller finance is because capital gains, right? So if they were to sell this, it would be, I'll get to you right after this. If they were to sell it, there'd be a six-figure capital gains hit. And so if they can defer that over the balloon, that's a lot more intriguing. Pay 100 grand, or hey, I think your duplex is worth about 800 grand. I'll give you 820 if you give me the terms I want. Okay, and I don't have to pay six-figure capital gains? Perfect.
So at the end, when there is a balloon payment, you still have to pay the capital gains, right? You can't 1031 with seller finance.
Well, you can sell, but the reason I say defer is always because you're never getting rid of capital gains. And so they're deferring it to X amount of years on the balloon.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I know that a strategy to defer capital gains until you die is basically 1031 until you die, right? And then you never have to pay the capital gains because then the kids get it at step basis.
Yeah.
You can avoid all the capital gains in general. But in this case, they're still paying those capital gains when the balloon comes due, but
Exactly.
they can avoid that.
Exactly.
Doing 1031 exchange.
Exactly.
Right.
Because the sale's done at that point. And so,
Are they paying during the period, or is it just interest?
no, so because it's, especially for me, a lot of the deals that I do are interest-only payments.
Right.
And so they're not paying any capital gains until the lump sum is due at the end.
Right.
And if my down payment is more than their basis, which is very rarely the case, then they might have some capital gains. But if my down payment is 20% down, and let's say on this $800,000 house, they bought it for $200K, chances are they bought it for $200K, they've put this amount in, so their basis is more than the down payment,
Right.
if that makes sense. Perfect. Any more questions on that? Perfect. Okay. On to the next one. Sub2. This avatar they're usually, and again, I've done a few of these deals for seller finance. I haven't done more than that. So this is me speaking from limited experience. But this avatar with Sub2 is typically, they're needing to sell, but they don't have equity. And so what they value is, instead of capital gains, they want to move, but they don't want to lose money. If someone has zero equity and they want to sell, they still have to pay agents. They still have to pay closing costs, etc. So all they're trying to do is not lose money. Get them out of a situation they're in. So they could be behind on payments too, and they're trying to get out of that situation. But usually, at least from what I've witnessed, again, not an expert at Sub2, clearly, I lost 180 grand on one. I'll get to you right after this one. But typically what I've seen is these are usually newer purchases or refinances, because when the deals make sense, the rates are lower. So the sub 3%, 4%.
Yeah, great topic, great subject. How do you get around the note being called due?
That is, yeah, that's the golden question, right? And so I've heard so many rumors as to how you can try and mitigate the risk of getting your note called due. And I firmly believe that they're just rumors, because the bank doesn't tell you. No one tells you. A few of the rumors I've heard is if you transfer insurance to a new owner, that could trigger something. Transferring title could trigger something. So that's why some people like contract for deed, which is when you don't have title. And then other ones are, even I heard this one recently, like servicing companies. So locally, escrow specialist is the go-to for the servicing company. And so like, instead of me having to talk to the seller, I'm paying escrow specialist, who's then paying the seller or the bank, right? So I've heard that even using a servicing company could trigger it. So now some people, because of that rumor, are going directly to the seller, getting their login information to their bank and making payments directly. So those are some of the rumors. I think they're rumors, but I've never heard concrete data as to backing that up. And think about how many different banks there are. Like, they don't all have the same processes. So any other questions on that?
Well, just to follow up, I think the question is how do you avoid that happening? I guess the answer is there's no way to avoid it. It could happen. You just have to plan that it could happen and have a backup plan if it does happen.
Amen. Yes, that's exactly right. And so I'm glad that you said that, because with Sub2, now when I look at a Sub2 deal, I'm thinking a whole lot more about my exit strategy. And so with that exit strategy, you have to be crystal clear, because especially if you're paying on a property that you have no equity on, the market tanks or even drops 10%, now you're in trouble. And so having clear expectations is extremely important. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, perfect. The next one. Cash deals. This avatar, they need to sell. It's usually distress, and they value convenience over highest net or profit. And what I always say, one of the sayings that somehow I made up, and I don't know, it's just stuck, but especially with cash deals, but this goes for all strategies. You guys should be looking for the ripe mango, not trying to chew on an unripe mango. If you had an unripe mango, it tastes like a freaking apple and you're gnawing at it and it's not delightful. But the ripe mango, it's like the best thing ever, right? So this is my analogy that I use. And the reason being is because people will get a lead, they'll bring it to me and they'll say, hey, this person's asking $50K over ask, what should I do? And I mean, there's little what you can do, but so many times people hang on to that lead for dear life. They'll lock it up, they'll try and sell it, they'll work with that seller and spend hours and hours trying to convince them. If you can devote that energy instead of trying to convince that one unripe mango and trying to nurture it forever, if you devote that energy into trying to find other deals that are ripe and ready and motivated, you're gonna have a whole lot better luck. So that's my 2 cents on it. Don't know where that analogy came from, but anyways. Okay, build list. Does anyone have any questions on defining your criteria? It's an important step, as Jaden discussed. But if no one has any other questions, we'll move right on.
Well, how do you define it if you're new? You don't know.
I'll get to that, Jaden.
That's actually my similar question. I was just curious your thoughts. I get asked all the time, like, how am I supposed to know what is the best investment strategy for me? Or because again, there's all these different things, and if you're new to real estate or just getting in, started on investing, what are your thoughts on like how to pick, the best strategy? Like, where do you start?
That's a really good question. And let's go back, and I appreciate these. Well, can we go back to the avatar page? Right here, actually, that's perfect. Okay, so let's just go through these. This is my 2 cents, but my opinion is that this is very dependent on personality. So that's something to think about. But I'll go through my personality and why I chose each, and maybe that'll help someone that's new. I don't know. But I think the real answer is to deep dive into these to feel what feels natural to you. So this is how I decided. Single family, that's like, there's a lot more single family homes out there. The barrier is a lot lower. And truthfully, the mentors that were around me were focusing on single family. So that's one of the reasons I naturally drifted to single family. Where is your market? Again, by natural cause, my mentor, Thatch Nguyen, believes heavily in investing in your own backyard. And the reason he says that is because if you're going to a property, actually physically going, you're gonna learn a lot more than if you're buying in the Midwest for some cash flow. So you're gonna learn the construction side, you're gonna learn the ins and outs a lot more than if it were out of state. So that's why I chose hyperlocal. And I would say I'm more city county. I claim my boundary is Salt Lake to Spanish Fork. But if a deal came in Bountiful, I'd lick my chops. So I'm still learning that too. So, and then what strategy? As I talked about those avatars, I would listen to that. Seller finance, I like working with sophisticated sellers. Working with distressed sellers is a whole nother ball game. Like, you're gonna have to be a therapist. You're gonna have to deal with their crap. There's gonna be cat piss everywhere. You're gonna have to drag dead cats out of a house. Those are all real stories. So that's the avatar. I was just like, eh. And then you also kind of feel this guilt of like they're in a distressed situation and you're buying at a discount. And I personally, that's my like trying to please everyone mentality. That's my personality. So seller finance, I drift more towards that. And there's a lot of people that will say that about these discounted properties. In my opinion, going back to the avatar screen, is they value convenience over profit. And if you're trying to squeeze a grandma's equity out, like that's the wrong seller. Like if you're trying to convince them to take 70% of its value and they're not in a situation where they need it, that's unethical. So finding the balance of where you feel like your personality fits is part of this discovery. So if you're brand new, Sub2 is intricate. So I would be careful in that. That's my 2 cents. I wouldn't run away from it, but there are a lot more red tape that you have to follow. So, and then the last one that just kind of attaches to whatever you're going after. And also add to that is what defines a deal. I've noticed that per market, it changes. Like in Seattle, people care a lot more about like percentage of ARV, whereas a lot of the wholesale deals that I see blasted out in Utah are like a cash on cash metric as well. Jaden, what's your 2 cents on that? When you send out deals, what metrics are people looking at most?
Yeah, for rental, it's cash on cash. For flips, percentage of ARV.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So he does a lot more volume than me. So listen to that, and whatever strategy you attach to, that's your answer there. Does that help a little bit? Okay, perfect. Alrighty, back to build a list. Okay, so when you're building a list, now let's say I'm going to use my strategy. Going back to it, I prefer seller finance. So if I am trying to build a seller finance list, I'm going to go to PropStream, which or title companies. You can use either or, and I'll talk about those. PropStream is a lot more interactive. You can play around with it. You can move the map around. You can see property parcels. The title company, you just kind of give them your filters, and they'll give you a list. For me, with seller finance, I find my location. I toggle the filter to 90 to 100% equity, because if it's 90%, then my down payment will cover that, plus some if they need some cash. So that's what I do. Own for 10 plus years. You'll see this metric on a few of the other ones. If they own it for X amount of years, that does not mean someone that's owned for 2 years is not open to seller financing, but the chances that if they've owned them longer increase. So I'm just trying to get as close possible. So yeah, any questions there?
So you're getting this from PropStream?
Yeah, that's what I use right now, just because it's more interactive and I can play around with it. Especially in a new market, I like seeing where I'm at. So I can barely get home from work because my directions are so bad. So
Do you find that most of the data there is accurate?
for skip tracing or for list building?
Yeah, well, both, I guess.
So list building's fine. It's just the same data pretty much as title company. Skip tracing, it's okay. I prefer batch leads, which I'll get into. Batch leads is actually cheaper. I think you can get it like 9 cents a record. And PropStream, I think, is at like 10 or 12. I could be wrong, it changes, but yeah. So we'll go to the next slide. Other filters for Sub2. Again, this is the opposite on the equity side, 0 to 10% equity. And bot/refinance from 2020 to 2022. Okay, next slide. Cash deals. And again, this is where I started the first in my career when the market was hot. This is what the market was preaching about because interest rates were low and it was good and dandy. So own for 7+ years, 50+% in equity, just because if I'm even going 70% of ARV and there needs to be margin for flips and burrs or whatever it might be, I need to make sure they have enough equity to take that. This, for cash deals, the filters could go on. Like there's a laundry list of them. Code violations, probate, divorce, tax delinquent. And these are all just filters that are showing distress, like they need to sell, right? And so that's where you're targeting. Any questions on that? Perfect. Okay. And then Jade, another quick question. I utilize you a lot because you do a lot of these, but for cash deals, what would you say are the hottest filters right now that have been working for you guys?
Like when we're doing direct to seller marketing?
Yeah, let's say you're pulling a list and it's like, and I'll add before you go, Jaden, there's, especially in these cash deals, it's called list stacking. So REI Stacker, if I am thinking of it correctly, this is a software that you can stack a probate list, code violations, divorce. And if that list pulls out, like, okay, this has 3 out of the 4, that lead's gonna be a lot hotter than if they had 1 out of the 4. So that's a strategy with cash deals. But just like those that I'm talking about, like code violations, probate, divorce, tax delinquent, out of those, do you have any other filters or one of those that has been working for you guys that you're aware of?
Yeah, so I've got a list of like the top 40 lists. I'd be happy to share it with you guys.
Perfect.
Just to name a few of them, there's absentee owner. But what he's saying about stacking lists is true, because just an absentee owner isn't going to be motivated. We call them motivation points. If you have like 10 different lists and you have a seller that's on 5 of those 10 lists, they're way more likely to be motivated because they're an absentee owner, they're behind on payments, you know, in pre-foreclosure, maybe their water turned off, like there's all these different things. There's a state sale eviction notice, you know, driving for dollars. Driving for dollars is a huge one because it's like your own custom list. Anyone can go buy a list on PropStream, but if you're driving for dollars, there might be a little bit of overlap, but you may be the only one with that contact information if you skip trace it yourself. So driving for dollars is probably the best one,
Yeah.
if I had to say.
And I'm going to highlight that in the marketing tactics. And the reason being, what he said is like, that's rarely going to be on other lists, is because there's no software or there's no data. I don't care if it's a credit card company. I don't care if it's title. No one knows what a property looks like unless like Google Earth or what is the Google Street View. If that teams up with AI and someone should invent that and I'll pay a lot of money for it. And they can determine, okay, this property has a tarp on the roof. This property has overgrown weeds. This property, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing out there that can decipher that. So that's why driving for dollars today is huge. So, okay. Any questions on that before we move on? Boom. Okay, the next one. Where to pull lists from. This is what we talked about. PropStream, title companies. Where to skip trace your list. PropStream or batch leads. And there's so many other options to both of these. This is just what I've had experience using.
When driving for dollars, I've used True Search, just because skip tracing is completely free. And you can do it right there on the spot.
I appreciate you bringing that up. True People Search is what I use daily for one-offs. True People Search is amazing. It's free. It's actually pretty good data. So for one-offs, like if you find a crappy house and you're like, I want to call on that, True People Search is perfect. If you're pulling a list of 1,000 people from Highland, then I would use a different software, correct?
It's crazy accurate too. It's scary.
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, any questions there?
So what was the software that you said that can stack the lists? REI stack?
REI Sift, S-I-F-T. Okay.
You can also do it in PropStream.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Just YouTube it, you'll figure it out.
Yeah,
You can-
okay.
yeah.
It sounds like PropStream might have a software as well that does it. Okay, next is market the list. We'll go right into this part. Okay, I am going to stand up for this one because this is a longer one. I am going to go through the different marketing tactics there's so many, but these are the ones that are probably most popular There's others, so you can throw those out there as well. And I'll kind of talk through them. But when you're choosing a marketing tactic or one or more, you're gonna find that there's a balance of time and capital. So you're gonna find out of these what makes most sense for you to figure out which one you should use. So when we're on this topic of how to find deals, I'm sure you guys were hoping like you'd come here and there's some golden nugget that's gonna help you find like 3 deals next week. Like sadly, it does not work like this. There's a lot of work that goes into it. But these are different tactics that can help uncover these leads. So I'll go through each of them. Pay-per-click, SEO. This is the most expensive that I've seen. So if someone search, I need to sell my house fast, then you're gonna come up and there's companies that will manage this for you and they'll pay you. It's pretty expensive, but if they search, need to sell my house fast, Lehigh, Utah, then your company comes up, they fill out a form, and the most expensive one are usually the hottest leads, right? And so if you have a lot more capital and you don't have time, then that's a good option. So a lot of these big. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay. Perfect. Now on the other note of that, so that AI robot caller, that's one side of it. One of my buddies in Seattle, one of the smartest people I've ever met, he's an investor as well. He was a software engineer at Boeing. He's since quit wholesaling. He's since quit investing in real estate. And he's used his real estate background and his software engineer background from Boeing to create what's called CloBot. And that's the same concept, but it's SMS. So they're texting, and it's a robot that's texting to build these leads. So that's another wild one that I can get you connected with. And yeah, so a lot, like as you can see, these marketing channels are constantly evolving. AI has put a huge dent in that, and you can be scared and run away from it, but I mean, it's here to stay, in my opinion. So, Jack?
What was that one called?
CloBot is the SMS, and on the flyer, actually, it's the QR code is on there. So in CloBot, so how he runs it, it's like a platform. And so you actually create your own bot through the platform that he's created. That's like backbone by ChatGPT. But he has partners as well that if you're interested and you don't, like I don't have time to create a bot right now. I don't have the time to manually like do it, and I'm not smart enough either, I don't think. And so and I think they make it easy for you. I haven't played with it, but there's partners with CloBot that actually will build it for you. So you can simplify it if you want to pay a little bit more money for that. But the cold caller campaign, which is also on that sheet, it's just like a Google form, so I would connect you with him. That is actually someone that builds it for you. So that's why it's where it is. Because CloBot starts at like $400 a month. So it's a lot cheaper, but you're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So any questions there? Okay, next is managed cold callers. This is the most consistent one that I've done and still my favorite. I'll see how my robot does for me, but managed cold callers has been huge. And the reason this one fits for me specifically is because it's on the middle of the pack on cost. But like for the top 3, PPC, direct mail, or I should focus on the top 2. Usually you're positioning one offering. For it to be most effective, you're like, hey, I'll buy your house cash. This is what I do, blah, blah, blah. Or, hey, I'm an agent in the area. I'm a boss. Look at how cool I am. Let me list your home, right? Like if you're doing pay-per-click or direct mail, usually you have one product. Whereas my cold callers are just trying to figure out if this person's interested in selling. And then at that point, I'm going to these appointments to then decipher what the best win-win situation is. If they want to net the most amount of money, then I can position listing because I'm licensed. If the house is crappy, they don't want to list it because they're embarrassed and they just want to be done with it, maybe flip is the option, maybe wholesale is the option, or maybe seller finance, right? Like you just go down the different tools. So that's why I like managed cold callers, because I have a little bit more control of the lead. Yeah.
So are you coaching the cold callers? Like what does that look like for you?
That's a great question. So there's two ways that you can do it. There's a website called onlinejobs.ph. It's a Philippines website. It's like a Craigslist for job postings where you can hire cold callers yourself and you would be the manager. You can coach them how you please. It's going to be a little bit more time sensitive, but it's going to be a lot cheaper. I want to highlight on this, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Remind me of your name, Mason? Got it. I've seen you around, so social media or whatever. Okay, so onlinejobs.ph. Think of the Craigslist for a job. I'm typically paying my Philippines like around $5 an hour. So before you guys call me a sweatshop or Nike or whatever you want to call me, I want you to know when I post a job listing in the Philippines for $5 an hour, no exaggeration, I get 200 job applicants within 2 days and I shut it off. $5 an hour to these people, they're going to be rolling up to the call center in a freaking Benz. Like, they're okay, I promise. And you can filter out those 200 people. A lot of times they'll include a voice recording. They'll include their resume. So you can find who has an accent that you think would benefit or who has the experience that benefits. You have a lot more control at that point. You can manage them. You can cater them to your needs. There's a lot of turnover in the VA world no matter what. So you can go that route, which is cheaper, pay the $5 an hour. Or you can go the managed cold caller route, which now that I'm more busy, I'd rather pay a company who manages these cold callers. Now I don't have to deal with turnover. Now I don't have to deal with coaching them. And they kind of just send me the leads. And the one that I'm doing now is like $700 a month for 5 days a week, 5 hours a week for one caller. So you can kind of pick
5 hours
a day.
a day.
Yeah, for 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So
700.
yeah, exactly. And there's a ton of companies out there. So, and again, like you can get away with paying $3 an hour. Like you're making the cost, right? So if you offer $3 an hour to the Philippines, your turnover is going to be higher. You're going to have less quality. Just pay them $5 an hour, and that's my advice. But anyways, okay. Next, SMS campaigns. This is something I've done in the past. I've never tried doing this myself. Again, with the red tape of what's legal, what's not, moving states, texting, SMS, there's red tape as well. You got to include like unsubscribe from this text message at the bottom. There's other stuff as well. I don't want to deal with that. So I hire a company that stays above board. I don't have to stress, and they send me leads. I don't do that anymore. I stick with my managed cold callers, but it works pretty well for me at the time. Okay, the next one, cold calling yourself. Cold calling yourself. The reason it's more expensive than driving for dollars, door knocking, calling on market listings is because I thoroughly recommend you invest in a dialer that's efficient, and I'll expand on that. You can have a dialer that has 12 lines at the same time, that you're calling 12 people at the same exact time. Whoever answers first, that's who you're talking to. Then if those other people are still dialing, it sends the voicemail. It's dysfunctional and it's crazy. The max I'll do is 3. And that works well for me. The answer rate versus like manually dialing is far beyond paying the $150 a month. Like it's so worth it. So if you're calling yourself, I do a 3-line dialer. There's a ton of different dialers that work for this. Lofty, the CRM that I use right now, they have a dialer that you can integrate into it, and it's been pretty easy to work with. There's Vulcan, there's Mojo Dialer, there's a ton. So Any questions on that front? Okay, perfect. So cold calling yourself. And I'll say too, this is something that even with my campaigns, I'm one of those weird people that enjoy cold calling. So I'll have my campaigns run, but because I'm trying to learn multifamily more in a market that I'm still new in, cold calling myself gives me so much market research. Like talking to these sellers in depth and talking to this 70-year-old grandpa whose grandparents or grandkids don't talk to, so he's talking to me for 35 minutes. Like, I learn way more about the area. I learn about my avatar, who I'm working with. And so as I'm trying to learn multifamily, cold calling myself has been huge and kind of picking up and learning from that. Okay, next, driving for dollars. Like Jaden was talking about, driving for dollars. There's a few apps like Deal Machine. Is there a driving for dollars app too? That's literally called that. I think there is. Anyways, Deal Machine's one of them. There's a bunch of driving for dollars apps that will like give you a map and you can pin different ones. And some of these apps will even let you like, they'll let you drop a postcard to that address, etc. So driving for dollars, and when you're driving for dollars, you have full permission to be judgmental. And the reason I say that is you're looking for the most ratchet house you can possibly find. So you're looking for tarps on the roof, like I was saying. You're looking for 48 beer cans in the front lawn. You're looking for, signs of people aren't taking care of your property, because that's where you're gonna find the deals. Any questions on that? Okay. Door knocking. I like to combine this, and I strongly recommend if you're driving for dollars, knock without literally just door knock without targeting, and that works too. It's a grind. The reason that's not number 9 on the list is because you got some gas money. And so then the last one, calling on market listings. Just from this strategy alone, last year, I did close to 6 figures just from calling on market listings, negotiating to where it made sense, and finding buyers. So, and I think truthfully, this is very market dependent. Like these strategies, all of them, there's gonna be some that work better in different markets. In the past year, as in a slower market, if we can call it that, and I'm talking from my experience is 2020 to 2022. So I'm one of those naive babies who just saw the golden real estate market and then saw the opportunity when it slowed down or it became a normal market, whatever you want to define it as. But there's deals on the market now. So, and I'll highlight on this one too, because this is something that I get asked a lot and I talk about on social media and I did well at, so I can speak on it in an educated manner. The simplicity of me calling on market listings is literally, and write this down, whatever you want, searching keywords on Zillow, seller financing, or motivated. It will show you all the listings that mention seller financing or they're motivated. Now you have to be careful. Sometimes when you say pull seller financing keywords, it will say flat out, we are not offering seller financing. So make sure you read the description. But what I do from there, the chance that it's a deal as they're presenting it, 99% of the time it's not going to be a deal. So it's not going to be a walk in the park. You're going to call that listing. You're going to uncover what you can about that. And then you negotiate it to where it makes sense as a deal. For example, when I'm calling on a listing, I say, hey, is this listing agent, blah, blah, blah. Perfect. Hey, I just want to ask you a few questions. I see that you're offering seller financing, and I just wanted to figure out a little bit more about what terms your seller is offering. And then once I figure that out, if they know, if they don't, I'm just trying to uncover data at this point. And then I'll probably highlight this more in part 2, so make sure you guys go to that. But I ask them what terms are their seller offering. Then I ask, is there an underlying mortgage? If they're offering seller financing, like I said before, a lot of people don't know the definition or their definition is different than mine. I'm not going to tell them they're wrong because everyone has their own definition. But a lot of times they're offering seller financing, but truthfully it's a sub-2 deal or a hybrid sub-2 deal. So for me, I want to know what I'm dealing with. I ask them, is there an underlying mortgage? Okay, cool. My next question, especially if they say there's no underlying mortgage, then my light bulb goes off because that's what I deal with. That's when I'm excited. My next question following that, if there's no underlying mortgage and now I know what they're requesting, then it's a backwards equation for me. I say, hey, listing agent, you know your seller better than me. Can you help me understand what terms your seller is, what terms are more important to your seller so that I can craft an offer that's a win-win scenario? That question alone will help you guys a ton, I promise. And so let's say, and then if they're like, what do terms mean? Like a lot of these listing agents have no idea what I'm talking about, so I'll break it down for them. Does purchase price matter the most? Does down payment matter the most? Does interest rate matter the most? Does monthly payment? Interest rate, which is their return on their capital, and monthly payment are different. I want you to understand that. If I have 4% that's amortized over 30 years, my payment and their monthly payment is going to be much higher than if I give them a 4% interest-only rate. Does that make sense to people? And that's crucial because think about it. If I am talking to a seller and they care more about the interest rate than the monthly return, then that's big for me because it's like, okay, my seller, he'll take nothing less than a 4% interest rate. And I say, okay, I run a 4% interest rate with a 30-year amortization and I'm negative cash flow 200. If I say, okay, fine, 4% interest only, and now it cash flows a few $100, I'm BSing numbers, but I'm just giving an example, then now that deal might make sense for me. And when I say cash flow $300, this is not the casual definition. I am incorporating vacancy, I'm incorporating maintenance costs, capital expenditures, which the roof, water heater are going to go out eventually. You need to take that into account now. Every single expense, property tax, insurance, I am thinking about from the get-go. So those are important metrics. I kind of went on a rant on that, but hopefully that helps. And then, sorry, let me finish that statement. Is it interest rate? Is it balloon payment? Is it blah, blah, blah? Now when I figure out what's most important to them, then I can work backwards from there. Hey, my seller is really sensitive. They just really want $700K. Like that's the most important thing to them. And they need $100,000 down because they need to get to their next property. Okay, cool. Now I'm going back and if I can give them $700K and $100K, $700K purchase price, $100K down payment, then I can get flexible on my terms. And then when I present it, hey, I appreciate you working with me on it. I wanted to make sure I gave you the terms that are most important to you, but in return, I would like terms that make this a deal for me. So I'll give you your $700K purchase price. I'll give you your $100K down payment. But in return, I want a 3.5% interest rate. So that's kind of my tactic there. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay, perfect. On to the next. My favorites and the ones that I've dealt with, direct market or direct mail, AI marketing, mostly because I'm excited, not because I have experience. Managed cold callers, cold calling yourself. Those are what I've dealt with most and had success with. Okay, now last slide, organizing leads. Okay, it's said that an average deal takes 8 points of contact before a sale in the real estate industry. What this means is that, like I said before, you're not going to close a deal on the first or second call. And what that means in return is that follow-up is going to be absolutely massive. And if you don't know how to follow up, if you don't have a clean system to follow up, your business is going to struggle and you're going to be spinning your wheels for a long time. So the answer, a clean and organized CRM. As someone with ADD that's as bad as it gets, I'm not organized. And I don't know if I'll ever be organized. So I put a ton of effort and systems in place to try and make sure that my CRM is manage. So that's my 2 cents. Some of the CRMs that I work with are Follow-Up Boss. I use that one. It works well, especially if you're specifically an investor. Lofty has worked well for my business as a hybrid of investor and agent. And Podio is a good, simple CRM that you can customize how you see fit, and it's free. So that's hard to compete with too. A couple of notes on the CRM and managing it, some tips that have helped me that I actually learned not from the investor world, but from the agent world, is that if there's a warm or a hot lead, and every business is going to be different. For me, it's nurture, warm, and hot leads. All of them are going to have a task. I don't care if it's a year out. I don't care if it's like 2 days out. Every single one of those people are going to have a task. And so part of Morley and I, like our daily endeavors, we're making sure everyone has a task. We're making sure that there's no overdue tasks. We're not perfect at it, but it's like guaranteed every single week we're going through making sure it's cleaned up. Because if you don't nip it in the butt as fast as you can. When I let it get away from me, it took me legit like 3 months to clean it up. And it's stressful, it's like anxiety, and it just is no fun. So if you're a little bit behind, it's better to nip it in the butt as fast as you can. So no overdue tasks, and make sure everyone has a task. Simple as that. Any questions there? Perfect. Okay. Now I just want to recap what we talked about. There's been a lot of information here. I've been rambling a lot, and I'm not used to being the one that talks the whole time, so I might need a cough drop after this, but hopefully it's been insightful to some degree. Number one, define your criteria. Figure out who you're going to market to. Figure out what strategy. Get crystal clear about what you want, or you won't get anything. Number two is build your list. So get the property address, get the names after you know your criteria, and then skip trace that list. So now you have all their contact info. Market the list. Once you have their contact info, once you have the list of names, now figure out which of those marketing tactics fits your needs. If you have more money and you're busy and you have a W-2 job, maybe you're on the higher of the list and you're paying for something that takes less of your time. If you're full-time real estate and you have more time, then maybe you go at the bottom of the list. And then number four, manage that CRM and keep those touch points going. So think about it. And one thing that helps for me, I have a strict rule in my business that I'm talking to 20 people a day. That's been my rule forever. Now that Morley and I team up, my assistant Morley, we get each 15 a day. So we're grinding, and I'm a lot busier now than I was at the beginning of my business. So we get 30 combined, and that's a strict rule. So something, when you're organizing your leads and this person says screw off, instead of being down about that, be excited about that, because that's one of your 15 or one of your 20 conversations. Count the no's till you get to your S. Count your no's till you get to your yes. It's a numbers game, 100%. So you need to get these dials in, you need to get these contacts, and the deals will come. The deals will not come if you just come to these events, learn, and feel good about yourself, and go home and don't take action. So that'd be my advice, is you can go to as many of these events as you can. They're fun. You get free pizza. That's all we can give you right now. They're fun. You feel good about yourself. You feel motivated, but motivation doesn't mean anything because it always comes crashing down. Discipline is what makes the wheels turn. So for me, having that number of conversation is huge. And that comes with discipline, not motivation. So that's my 2 cents. I've been rambling. Part two. We're going to talk about how to underwrite these deals, how to negotiate, and how to close these deals. So I kind of gave a rundown of how we're going to uncover the leads, but then what do you do when someone says, yeah, I need a sale in the next 3 weeks. What can you do for me? Please help. That's what this next part is going to go after. So that'll be next month, April 23rd. It will be a new location. So we're not specific on exactly where that location will be, but it'll probably be more down south. So if you're up north, I'm sorry. If you're down south, join the boys. That's where I'm at. Okay. Next, audience Q&A.